All right, and it's 12:05. So I know people will continue to come in, but we're going to go ahead and get started because we have a lot to talk about today and I want to make the most of our time. So welcome everybody. I am Candida Gonzalez. I am here as a consultant for Forecast Public Art. I'm really excited to welcome our four Indigenous femme non-binary artists who are going to be talking about their murals that they created for Chroma Zone Fest this year. Before we get started talking to them, I want to do a little bit of space keeping here. So closed captioning is available if you would like to use it. Click on the CC closed caption button at the bottom right of your screen. We have our chat enabled here. So please feel free to put comments or questions or links into the chat. Right now, again, we ask people if you want to just drop into the chat where you're coming from and say hi to the panelists. That would be great. I want to start out with talking a little bit about Forecast Public Art, who is sponsoring this talk today. So Forecast is a nonprofit arts organization founded in 1978, which I always remember because that's when I was born too, by and for artists working in public space. Based in St. Paul, Minnesota, and working both locally and nationally, Forecast connects artists with cities, institutions, and communities to courageously tackle the vital issues of our time. We partner with decision makers and stakeholders on arts and cultural planning efforts and support public artists with funding, training, and opportunities to create partnerships and advance their public art careers. We also help others find, select, curate, and fund and commission public artists. Forecast emphasizes access for artists of color, Indigenous artists, and groups that are traditionally excluded. And if you don't know the link to Forecast Public Arts, we at some point will drop it in the chat. I encourage you to check out our website to see all the opportunities that we have available and also follow us on Instagram. And now I'm going to welcome our four artists that we have joining us today. First, we have Thomasina Topbear, who is a self-taught Oglala, Lakota, and Santee Dakota artist. She is a member of the international all-female paint crew, Few and Far Women, and helped co-found City Mischief Murals, an all-Black, Indigenous, and Pacific Islander collective. Thomasina has organized a number of local and national community-based murals focusing on youth, women, and Indigenous artists. Thomasina's influences come from her Ochete Shakowin culture and graffiti style type lettering. She uses art to express her feelings on community, social justice, spirituality, feminism, and togetherness. So welcome, Thomasina. Next, we have Holly Miskitoos Henning Garcia, Marten Falls Anishinaabe First Nation, Constance Lake Oji-Cree First Nation. Holly is an active visual artist and muralist who is a lead organizer for a BIPOC artist collective called City Mischief Murals in the Twin Cities area. She uses art to elevate community voice, healing, and advance change. She has been part of several community arts-based events and mural projects throughout the United States, Canada, Africa, and Mexico. She uses acrylic paint, aerosol paint, traditional Native American art forms, and dance as a personal and political tool to address, explore, and portray contemporary Indigenous struggle. So welcome, Holly. Next, we have Marlena Miles, who's a self-taught Native American Spirit Lake Dakota, Mohegan, Muscogee artist located in St. Paul. Her art brings modernity to Indigenous history, languages, and oral traditions. Growing up on her traditional Dakota homelands here in the Twin Cities, she enjoys using her artwork to teach Minnesotans of all backgrounds the Indigenous history of this place we call home. Welcome, Marlena. And finally, we have Missy Whiteman, Northern Arapaho and Kickapoo, who is an Emmy-nominated writer, director, producer, and multimedia artist. Whiteman understands her work to be a voice for her ancestors, their stories, and ancestral wisdom. Her late father, Ernest Whiteman, influenced her work with the gift of artistic vision and practice of art as ceremony. While based in part in Indigenous traditional practices and perspectives, her work also addresses themes of historical genocide, loss of culture, and land in relation to colonization. Whiteman questions the connection of life, death, spirit world, and the rebirth process of revitalizing DNA memory, spirit healing, and redefinition of cultural identity. So welcome, Missy. And let's just jump right into this. So let's start out with talking a little bit about our artistic journeys. So let's start with Thomasina. Tell us about your artistic journey. Where did you start and why do you do what you do?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me in the space. And it's so good to see everyone today. So how I got started on my artistic journey was growing up, I was a little bit mischievous. And so I started off doing graffiti. I started doing that around when I was 13, 14 as kind of a way to like just identify my surroundings, to identify with my surroundings. Originally I grew up on the Santee Dakota reservation. I moved here when I was about 11, 12. And so like this place, like I didn't really know much about being like in a city, but it definitely helped me like identify with everything, being able to see like my graffiti on the street. And now as like an adult, being able to see like murals that I've created in my surroundings. So that's kind of like how I got started on my artistic journey. And that kind of evolved into doing community murals. When I was younger, I used to do like youth care and street outreach, but I wasn't able to like continue doing that and like sustain myself in a healthy manner. So I figured that the best way I could give back to my community was to create for my community.
Thank you. Let's move to Marlena. Tell us about your artistic journey. Where did you start and why do you do what you do?
I guess I've always been drawing my whole life. My mom got me my first computer like in 1998 when it was like dial-up, and I just got, I don't know, addicted to the computer at an early age. And so I combined it with my passion for art, and started getting into digital art. And from there, as I became an adult, I realized, thinking back as my childhood, how I often didn't see much Native presence in the Twin Cities. There's nothing really proclaiming it as Dakota homeland, even though I grew up at Little Earth and that Native community. But once you step out of that, I didn't really see anything. So I wanted to create through my art just resources and materials that like I didn't have growing up that would have, made a difference in my life, and just create that for the future generations.
Awesome, thank you. I also want to invite the artists, when you get a chance, if you want to drop your websites or your Instagram handles in the chat so people can check out more of your work after the webinar. I think that would be really great. Let's move to Missy. So again, same question. Tell us about your artistic journey.
Dos Hinanae Missy Whiteman. I belong to the Northern Arapaho and Kickapoo nations. It's pretty self-explanatory in my bio, but digging deeper and further back, it definitely had, of course, influence from my father. Really what he taught me is that to us, like art is there is no word for art. And in our traditional ways and values, like as an artist, our responsibilities were to be the messengers between the living world, the spirit world, and the creator. And whatever it is that we create is that message from our ancestors, from spirit world, from creator, for the people. And so I really take that into what I do, but it also leads back to like growing up. I wanted to do everything my father did. I wanted to just emulate everything that he did. So now that we're in the second phase where it's like, okay, here's what you have, this is what you've learned, and now let's put this into practice to help support other younger artists, other emerging filmmakers, to also find a different practice than I think the colonized way of muralism, filmmaking, art in general.
Awesome, thank you. And finally, Holly, tell us about your artistic journey.
Bujuani, Miskitoos, Waptanom, Indigenous, Imi Wanabo, Kwe Indigenous, Makwan and Dudem, Obokima and Junchaba, Ashke Bigazi Bang Indea. My Cree name is Morning Prayer Woman, and my Ojibwe name is Dancing Rainwater Woman. I'm Bear Clan. My son also wants me to tell you all, his name is Wasamo Anin, which translates to holds lightning. Yeah, I think, okay, honey. And I think where my kind of passion for art started was being raised by my grandmother. She was real traditional and she was always doing things with her hands. And so from a young age, she taught me like how to do traditional beadwork. There's a traditional practice called birch bark biting. And some of those pieces, regalia making, and just some traditional forms of dance and like how that tied in with healing and ceremony in our communities. And I think for me, I found that to be really healing in a way to express myself. And then as I got older, I started exploring like other mediums like painting and spray painting, obviously. Dabbled in the graffiti world myself as well. And yeah, have just continued to like learn different art forms as a form of expression.
Awesome, thank you. Thank all of you for your answers to that question. Now we're going to move into talking about the murals that you created for Chroma Zone this year. And I think before we let everybody in, I was saying I've been following all of your process on social media as you guys have been creating these murals and then seeing the final pieces, and it's just absolutely mind-blowing. So I'm really excited to hear all of you talk about your murals. So let's start with Marlena. Can you tell us about your mural, what it represents, and why it is important to you?
Yeah, I can share my screen, I guess, up to people who haven't seen it. Can you see that? Okay. Well, this is called the Kaposia Times. Kaposia was a historic Dakota village that was located downtown St. Paul, kind of like where the Union Depot is, but sometimes it was near Phelan Creek, sometimes it was across the river, just depending on the flooding conditions and various other elements. But that was sort of like when they were building Fort Snelling, that's where the Dakota people that they were interacting with, a lot of them lived at that village. So they were neighbors to the early European colonizers to this area. And so I want to create a piece, that shows Dakota people not at war, like you always see in pictures, or not being killed, like you always see in pictures, but, just having a relaxing time reading about the news. Even though that Dakota village moved in 1851 when they signed a treaty that's how they kind of acquired this area, the Europeans, the Twin Cities. And that's when that village had to move further south along the Minnesota River. And so on that newspaper, it has like the year 1851 that's just referencing that treaty. But I also wanted to create it as if it was like a fantasy world, as if like, what happens if people could get along and they didn't go to war and they actually stayed neighbors, like what could we have learned from each other starting back then rather than doing it, like in recent times where people have become, more open-minded to people of different backgrounds. So I don't know, I just want to create something positive that references history, but also, show Dakota people and the different elements that that we had back then, and then also some sort of like ties to the present. And I was also thinking about the area where this mural was, it's along a bike path. And when we're painting it, so many people on bikes would yell, like, keep up the good work, we love it, like I love the buffaloes. So here in the actual mural, you'll see like the horses and the waterways. Those are traditional routes of like transportation too. So even though it's not like clearly obvious, like what that connection is, I just want people to subconsciously see these images, you know, and change their perspective of or perception of Native people and Dakota people, you know, and not see us telling our history as something hostile, but, you know, sharing space with us. So that's really what this is about. I mean, some people too thought I was creating it for like a school or something, because the colors look so bright, like you would see like in a kid's, I don't know, a kid's mural or something. But, you know, I think that space just needed a real nice pop of color. And I think on a sunny blue sky, you know, as if you've seen this picture, you see how the colors just really keep it from looking drab. Because I'm thinking all 4 seasons in Minnesota, like in the winter, when it's all like pure white with snow and this in this industrial area, like I think this mural will, you know, help the community people keep from, you know, feeling that seasonal depression that we all feel too. So I just want people who live in that community, you know, to feel happiness and joy when they see it. So that's pretty much all I really have to say, I guess, about my piece.
I'm glad you talked about the color choice, because that was actually one of my questions for you. Like, why did you choose that color palette? But I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that, or about other color palettes that you use in other murals.
No, I mean, I just think people in Minnesota, we love like the color blue because the name of the state, you know, it's like clear waters reflecting blue skies. So yeah, I think that's just something that has always been a characteristic of this land. And that's what, you know, I think just want to subconsciously put that into the pieces too.
Thank you. And then one question, that white bird in there, what bird is that? And what does it represent, if anything, in the mural?
It was just my adaptation of a sandhill crane, I guess, because one time I saw it, I heard it, and I was like, what is this alien bird? You know, like I've never seen it. And so I don't know, I always wanted to draw one, even though it doesn't look exactly like how they look because they're more brown and stuff. But I don't know, I just wanted to put that bird in there because it was interesting to me.
I think it's really beautiful. The whole mural is gorgeous. So thank you so much for talking about it with us. And then just quickly, you know, as the artists are talking, if you out there have any questions about the murals, please feel free to drop those questions in the chat and we can address them as we're talking to the artists. So we're gonna move on to Holly. Holly, can you tell us about your mural that you created? What does it represent? Why is it important for you?
All right, can y'all see that? So the mural that I did, it's in my head, it's a translation of my son. So the mural itself is called Wasamoanin, and as I explained, that is his spirit name that was given to him. And it literally translates to holds lightning in Anishinaabe Moan, which is the Ojibwe language. And during his naming ceremony, he was given these 3 shades of blue as his spirit colors that are supposed to kind of help power him up, and which is why I featured those here. And then, so like if you look obviously on the left, there's a bear that is in the left corner, and there is a thunderbird in the right corner. My family, or like my side, happens to be Bear Clan, which were responsible for healing medicine and protection of our community. And then on the other side, his father is Benesi Clan, Bird Clan. And typically when young people receive their names, they follow the paternal side. So with clan systems, typically like your son would fall under the same clan as their father. However, in our unique case, this elder felt it was really important that Wasamo carry my clan as part of our kind of moving along down the road. And so really it's a tribute to my son. And he, you know, he's brought a lot of good things for my life. So I'm getting all emotional talking about it. So, but yeah, I mean, the babies, I think, bring a whole nother level of healing in our lives and joy. And I think that he's taught me so much in his 5 little years of life. So it's a tribute to him and all of the things that, you know, he's given to me. So Miigwech, thank you for allowing me to share.
Yeah, you know, I'm wondering because your son is there. Does he want to say anything about the mural himself?
I'll ask. Hey, David boy. Come here. He says nope.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I understand kids feeling shy. I did have one question. The flowers underneath the hand in the middle, and even just that whole imagery right there. Is there any special symbolism or representation?
Yeah, so the florals that are featured are like a version of kind of traditional Ojibwe floral. Specifically, there's like these are, I don't know if you see my mouse, but these are like tobacco leaves, which are what we use to pray with. We offer tobacco when we're praying and things like that. So there's some traditional floral, and then there's sweetgrass over there. So yeah.
Awesome. And then also the heart motif that's next to both the bear and the bird. Is there any special meaning there?
I think just like a literal interpretation of like giving your heart to create something.
Awesome. I love it. Let me check and see if there's any questions in the chat. No, but there is a comment from Catherine. Your emotion comes through in the mural, and I loved watching you create with him by your side. We need to see motherhood in this way. Thank you. I totally agree with that. Amazing. And then from Betty, Holly, your mural is so interesting. It was great to hear all the deeper meanings and how your beautiful artwork is integrated into the story of your son and your family. Betty. Yeah, thank you, Betty. And thank you, Holly, for giving us that explanation. I can't, so now also I'm like, I need to go back and see Marlena's mural again. I need to go see Holly's mural again. So you guys are just like giving me a whole new love for your work. So thank you. Let's move on to Missy. Missy, can you talk about your mural, what it represents and why it's important to you?
Hi, so my mural is actually a work in progress. So I have an event this Saturday, September 25th, which is the Celestial Embodiment, and it is has live elements of live painting, live score, performance, and spoken word and hip hop. And it's something that for me brings not only the mural, which the context has elements of missing murdered. So I'll show you some of the elements right now. I was looking for a sketch, but I can pop that up after. So share my screen. So these are some of the elements that it includes. So this is a mosaic. Can everybody see that? Okay, so I worked, I want to thank Mosaic on a Stick and one of their artists, Juliet Myers, who assisted me with this piece. This is mosaic, and there's mirror on the inside, and on the tips are also mirror. And in the center, which is really interesting, it's a thunderbird, and it was originally a water bird. And I think that's interesting that you mentioned that, Holly. So one of the elements of the birds was changed for just different reasons. And for me, like, I really have to, in order for me to make a change to my art, I really have to like pray about it. I have to like ask for, permission to change it. And so what came to me was this Thunderbird and this particular shape. To me, I feel like it's a very recognizable image for people, but also it also has multiple beliefs for us as well. So this is a polytab, and this is an image of my daughter Molly. And so this is when she was in first grade, and this also represents missing and murdered. So this is something for me that is personal, but it's also something that, again, motherhood is so important. Having our babies with us when we paint, and painting alongside of us is really important part of my process too. So here's a close-up of the Thunderbird with the mosaic. And I think I have one of Molly's pictures that she took. So she wanted to take a panoramic view of it, but that was her media skills. So this is one at night that we took. So this is actually the morning star, and then there's also 7 stars, which are the Pleiades. And this represents April 3rd, 2020, when the Pleiades were closest to the morning star. So the morning star is significant to my people as well as other tribes as well. It's the first star that you pray to in the morning. It's the first star, the last star to leave the night. Yeah, so that's it. I don't have a sketch. I can bring it up later when I find it. I'm transitioning from painting to doing a Zoom. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Missy. I'm really excited to see what it looks like when it's done. Just one question, you mentioned the Pleiades, and I know that those stars have significance in many different cultures. Can you talk a little bit more about those stars and what they mean to you and to your culture?
Yeah, so depending on which region you're from, you could either be from the plains and or the woodlands. The woodlands have the belief in the 7 sisters, and particularly the Iroquois Nation, and then more the plains belief is the 7 brothers. And there's a whole story, but I can't get into the stories because there's no snow on the ground, so I can't tell them.
Great. Well, I don't want to say that I hope we have snow soon, but I know they are interesting stories, and the snow will come at some point, so we'll hear them. I just wanted to bring that up because I know Missy and I have talked about this before, and you know, the Aztec and the Taino, and you know, so many of our origin stories in Latin America, in Japan, in Europe, all linked to the Pleiades. So really, really interesting, and always interesting to hear more stories about it. And so if that's something that you're not familiar with, you might want to do some research on it in preparation for going to see Missy's finished mural and hear stories.
Yeah, so one of the things too that reminds me, Candida, which that's very significant, is the connection between star maps and sacred sites. And so we have a very big, I don't want to say a movement, but there's a lot more knowledge nowadays than there were maybe growing up about sacred sites, the significance of sacred sites, and also our star maps. So part of my work is really to look at, like, first of all, if it's public art piece, where is this at? Second of all, making that connection between the space, the place, but also telling a story through stars, and also connecting them through our geometric shapes, which are modified traditional shapes, like, let's say, like rock writings or pictographs. And that was a lot of the work that my father did. He studied them his entire life. And for me, it's really like, this is the second part of his research and his studies, is bringing that into more of a modern day context and language through art. So there's symbols on there that represent heart and lungs, and then also Turtle Island. And yeah, to me, like, it all tells a story through symbols, through imagery that may not be something that non-Indigenous people recognize, but I think for Indigenous people to Turtle Island, it tells the story directly. There's a lot of symbolism in there that I think my people will understand.
Thank you, Missy. So I see there's something in the chat. Missy, is very interesting that your mural is, as you say, a work in progress, because I believe that is true of all of us. Your daughter's mural is amazingly beautiful. Also, it's awesome as to what the morning star looks like in the evening. It seems to be lighted on its own, which is very cool connection to your heritage, Betty. Yes, I agree. I also now I'm like, ooh, I want to go out and check out that mural at different times of the day and see how the light, or different times of the year, because I assume that you've thought about that as you're creating it.
Yeah, there's definitely, we have translucent paint. So we have, it has a sparkle. So it actually, depending on the day, it might turn out blue. So for the, gosh, I can't think of the word, for the nebulous, there's either like, depending on, like in the morning, it's blue, like towards the afternoon, it's more purple. And so that itself shifts color too.
That's incredible. Beautiful. I can't wait to go check it out. Also, if you look in the chat, Missy's Celestial Embodiment event, there's a link to it there. Is this Saturday night. I know I'm counting on my babysitters to show up that night so I can go to the event. I'm really excited for it. So everybody should go ahead and check that out. Thank you, Missy.
Bring a chair. That's all. Just bring a chair. Okay. The end.
Bring a chair. Okay. Yeah. Great. Thank you. And finally, let's talk to Thomasina. And Missy, do you want to stop sharing your screen? It's okay.
No, I don't. I'm just kidding.
Missy just took it over. Is Missy?
No, I'm like, do you guys want to help me do my work? My admin work. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Missy. So Thomasina, let's talk about your mural. Tell us about it. What does it represent and why is it important to you?
Hello, everyone. I wouldn't have mind if Missy just kept going, because public speaking is not like my forte at all. And I love to hear Missy's stories, so. But let me share my screen really quick and I can bring up my mural, make sure I have the right photo. Let's see. Okay, do you guys see the screen? Okay, perfect. So this mural right here is called Uchi Maka, and it means grandmother earth. And this is painted on like the Murphy rigging building. It's kind of tucked away like a few streets in off of University, in like the industrial area over there. So this is actually my largest solo mural that I've ever painted. And I forget the measurements off the top of my head right now, but it's something like 16 feet high by like 94 something feet across. And so this took me like off and on a period of a few weeks to paint. And so I wanted to create something that not only like I had a connection with, like which I'll touch base on, but like other people in the neighborhood, other natives, other indigenous people, other Dakota and Lakota, like Oji-Cree people could relate to. And that's something that I think was successful in doing so. So right here I have featured like a more elaborate like morning star, which for me is like my connection to my ancestors and everything that's surrounding us. And then I've featured sunflowers, and something that like in my time of painting and connecting more with like my Oji-Cree culture and people has been like definitely like the sunflower has really big significance. Something I learned recently was or last year that like really like holds like a lot of like deep meaning for me is the sunflower never stops praying, and it's something that the Lakota people use as a symbol of strength and endurance because it's always looking up to the sun. And so that's something that I like to use in my art, especially for the fact that like it helps me get through every day is knowing, just looking up and praying. And so, but yeah, this is my mural. And then I have like sweetgrass. And the one thing I guess I would have changed about this is like having like the pronunciation, like spelling out there. But I have it on my Instagram and people want to look at it. You know, it's Uchi Maka. So it's not like, I got a lot of questions about that when I was painting it, a lot of unti or, you know, what does that mean? So that would be like the one thing that I'm going to do in the future is going to be doing more like punctuation, pronunciation, like spellings, because it's something that I really want to do is doing like more language murals. Because I really feel like culture and spirituality is something to be shared, especially with other natives. And so something about this piece, like an interesting story would be that when I was painting it, you know, there was like a cohorts of wonderful natives that were like hanging out down at Missy Whiteman's mural. And there was one specific artist, Janus, who happened to be from Kyle, South Dakota in Pine Ridge, which is where my mom grew up. And so like that was really cool and interesting because like my entire time in the Twin Cities, I don't think I've ever met anyone that like was from Kyle or like currently live there. And so that was really cool and how that like came about and how that connection came about. And then also it was like a few days later, there was another guy who went to the school down in Kyle actually, and he was just driving by and he pulled over. He's like, oh my God, I had to stop because like I looked at that and all I saw was like, you know, that's Lakota, that is Oglala. And I was like, I'm from Oglala. And then he's like, no way, I'm from Oglala. And so like, it was a really cool experience to be able to connect with other Oceti-Sakowin people, especially on this land. And the colors I like to use like really bright colors, things that stand out. It's just something that I've always been drawn and attracted to. Is using that blue color. And I really like what Marlena Miles had said about like, you know, using that blue color, you know, as a reflection of like the water and the land that we live on. We are around so many different bodies of water. And that just like, whether we like think about it or not, that shapes like who we are. And so that's just something that I really like to use. And I have like the different like little like butterflies and bees, and I have a hummingbird featured as like something that like as a way to represent life. You know, the hummingbird to the Lakota people is like I think like translate to like lover of flowers. And so that I think is like really special. And right now in my personal life, I'm trying to attract a hummingbird in my yard. You know, one day, hopefully. And so yeah, this is the piece I created.
That's amazing. Thank you. I really appreciated hearing the story behind the sunflowers. I noticed that you also have echinacea, or why am I blanking on the other name for it right now? Coneflower in here. Is there any special significance or symbolism there?
Yeah, so like that's also like because just like the sunflower, it's used to like strengthen like the immune system and your heart if you like drink it in tea or things like that. So it does actually have like a medicinal use. And so it is to show that like, you know, everything around us, everything that grows around us has a reason for doing so, and that we can use it as well.
That's beautiful. Thank you. I do want to say that echinacea in my yard this year, some of it grew even taller than me, which like, so it kind of reminded me of the sunflower. I mean, I'm only 5 feet, so it's not really saying much, but that echinacea can grow really, really high. And I love that you're trying to attract a hummingbird into your yard. Please tell me if you have any success and what any tips would be, because I also would love to have a hummingbird in my yard.
You know, I've gotten pretty close. You know, we had one visit our yard a few weeks ago, but we haven't seen it come back. And I think it's just like, yeah, putting out that planting like the right things in your yard. We also have like a water dish out there for birds and things like that. So just trying to create a good pollinating yard.
It's beautiful. Well, if I happen to see a hummingbird in my yard, I will whisper to it and tell it to go to your yard.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Candida.
Yeah. Oh, and Holly says they really like maple sugar mixed with water.
Mm.
Good to know. Okay, well, thank you, Thomasina. And if you want to stop screen sharing, we will move on to our next question. And I really love this next question because I know as a young person, it is hard to imagine breaking into the art world, especially if you are Black, Brown, Indigenous. You know, how do you get into this art world? So my question to you guys is, what advice do you have for other emerging Indigenous, femme or non-binary artists? And I love if you could just popcorn out. Whoever's ready to talk can talk.
Oh, well, I'm unmuted, it looks like. So I would just say that, like, you know, my advice for younger artists is to keep practicing, and you know, whether it be like, you know, you practice an hour a day, which can be a lot, you know, we have busy lives, but like just do like something small every day to kind of feed that part of yourself, because it's all about like commitment, and then also like building that repetition of getting into the habit of creating, and soon it just becomes like second nature. Also, not being afraid to reach out to people, and especially older folks, because you'll be surprised on how many people want to help each other succeed, especially as Indigenous people.
I can go. I was gonna say, like, just go to art events, even if they're not for Native people or whatever. Like, there's artists who are cool from all different backgrounds. The Twin Cities kind of has like the same people at every kind of show, so you kind of start learning who people are, who's sort of like who's doing what, and then, you know, just find ways to let people know what you're passionate about, what you want to help out with, you know, and people find a way to work you into the system. Me, when I first started going to shows, like I was pretty shy, not good at talking to people back then. And so I would just wear cool outfits and then people come talk to me first, you know, and that was like my icebreaker. So even if you're a shy person, you know, just find a way to, I don't know, to get yourself out there. You might have to force yourself to keep going places, but every artist I've ever met, you know, they've always been really cool. And if they know that you're just starting out, you know, everybody has tips for you there too. So I think it's, you know, it's healthy for you to go to any kind of art event that you see happening.
Thank you, Marlena. I really feel that, because I know when I was starting out my art career, I would, even though I felt really shy a lot of the time, I would just force myself to go to events and force myself to talk to people. I love your outfit idea, like wearing an interesting outfit so people will come and talk to you. That's great. But yeah, just like forcing yourself to talk to people. And honestly, like out of every artist that I've met in the Twin Cities, like 99% of them are so incredible and nice and want to help. So yeah, just getting out there. Thank you. Missy, I saw you were about to say something.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Marlena had this really cool like Prince outfit on at their event this last Saturday, which I was like, what? It was really cool. I want to also like say too that like my daughter Molly's like 11, and so she's been able to meet like other artists who like you, Marlena, like you, Tommy, and Holly, at Intertribal Styles, and to just be like, this is something that I can really see myself doing, because there are people here that I admire and that I look up to. And, you know, like I'm mom. I mean, I'm not at all cool to her. She's like, you tell me to brush my hair in the morning and take a shower. So we're not always cool. So that's the one thing is like, I think in our community, like the accessibility and also just being having those cultural values too, like, like Holly, like is a dancer and also teaches other younger people to create their own regalia and brings those teachings to, Tommy, like definitely like put a spray can in Molly's hand and it was like, don't worry about it, it's good. And, and I think just even having that connection that Molly had, like, I'm going to say that's a lot, just speaking from someone who's like, I know that this young person is in my life is creative, but at the same time, like, that's what helped me too growing up, is just to have artists around me to encourage me and to say, like, you can do it. And like, I agree with Marlena, like the art world is just so open. Like, you don't really have to explain yourself too much, to people, other artists, especially being Indigenous, people just get it. So, and also like being willing to like encourage, the next generation of artists and, our elders who are artists too, like bring them into your work, bring them into your process too. That's really important. So, the end.
Thank you, Missy. Holly, do you have anything to add?
I would just echo what everyone else has said. I really think that I think a lot of people would be surprised at the level of like support and just like willingness and openness that is amongst like other Native artists, not only in the Twin Cities, but like all over, everywhere that I've gone. Just it's really amazing. Like there's just that connection of that happens, like, oh, you create and I create and we're both Native, and even if we come from a different like tribe or background, like there's still just that automatic connection that happens. And I think too, for a lot of young people, like my just kind of other piece of like advice would just be like not being hard on yourself in like how you create and not comparing yourself to how other artists create or what their creation looks like, because we all have our own gifts and our own responsibilities, and how Missy does something is going to be different than how I do something, and how Tommy does something is going to be different than Marlena does something. And one thing that always sticks with me is, because I've been painting with Thomasina for quite a while, is when I was a little bit younger and not as confident in what I did, she told me just one time, like, don't worry about it, you can always paint over it. And that's something that's just like really stuck with me, and I've been able to pass on to some other younger ones who have like started painting and then been like, oh, well, I don't want to paint there because I'm gonna mess it up. Like that's just kind of been our like, it's okay, you can always paint over it. So yeah.
Thank you guys so much for all of that really sweet advice. So I noticed that there is one question in the Q&A. I want to encourage everybody, if you have questions that come up, please drop them in that Q&A or drop them in the chat. We have one more planned question that I'm going to go through with the artists, and then we'll have some more open time. So my last question to you guys, and I hope that you caught this in the email and you might have something prepared. I want to throw it out to you guys, and you have a chance to ask a question of one of your fellow artists. So whoever wants to go first can go.
I can go first, so that someone can ask my question. I would think of second one, that's hard. But, with Thomasina, I think a lot of people who do graffiti, they've learned a lot from you. So I was wondering if you ever thought about setting up like classes to, teach people. It could be the youth, or it could be pretty much anybody, how to go about becoming a spray paint artist, like your process, everything. I think it'd be a really good learning tool. And I think a lot of Native youth, they'd be really interested in it, and especially Native girls, get them into doing graffiti.
Well, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. So I do teach classes every once in a while. They're like very sporadic when I do, but I do enjoy them. you know, teaching young people. It was the way that like I learned growing up, was like by older folks who were basically like my age now. Like they were always teaching young folks how to do things. And so that was something that like I do in the future. Like if like something comes up where folks would be interested in creating a class like that, something that, you know, I do. And then I also like say that like when I'm painting a large scale mural or things like that, I encourage folks to come and say hi. And, you know, as some people know, like to come and, you know, I'll usually put a can of spray paint in your hand and tell you kind of like the tips about using spray paint. Because I think once you have like a general idea of how to do it, it becomes a lot easier. You know, for folks, it is usually scary at first, but like once you're actually doing it and know how like spray paint works, you always know that you can redo everything. So nothing, like just like in life, nothing's ever permanent. You can always reshape it. But yeah, that's something that like I definitely thought about. You know, I've chatted about it this summer about creating type of like community classes where folks can come and learn if they want to and things like that. So yeah, it's definitely like on my radar for the future. And then Marlena, if you ever want to learn how to use spray paint too, just hit me up.
Yeah, that's why I asked the question. I was just thinking about myself first. None of those kids, you know. I'm just kidding.
You're always welcome.
I was thinking about myself too. I'm like, I want to learn from Thomasina how to use spray paint. Heck yeah.
Be all pushing the kids out of the way. Just kidding.
Yeah.
We do not push kids out of the way. I am just kidding. It's native humor. It's kind of a dark humor. Just I'll jump in. I have a question too for everyone. So when you were growing up, when you were younger, like who was your first like artistic influence?
I can answer first, just because once again, I don't know. My mom and my grandma, my aunts, you know, they all did traditional beadwork, and you know, those were, I saw them making money. You know, like they would set up at powwows, they'd sell to the Indian store or whatever. You know, so you know, I just saw them as always working hard and you know, creating these beautiful pieces of work, and that sort of, you know, inspired me, even though I don't do anything traditionally necessarily, because my mom, she's always like, you know, do it your way. She's always encouraged me to do it how I feel like I should express myself, you know. And so I think that's, you know, the first, I guess, artistic influence for me.
I'll just jump in there. Just like Marlena, it was just like learning from my family and you know, like as Native people too, like everyone that surrounds us essentially is artists. You know, we're all like always creating and always learning. You know, and I don't know when, but I was listening to Marlena talk about art and Dakota people and about how we like we learn and we like always we're always adding things to kind of like our repertoire of things because we're constantly learning and we're always changing, and we're very creative people in that way. And so I've thought about that a lot, and so I do appreciate that. But yeah, it's just from family, I suppose.
Yeah, I think mine definitely came from my grandmother, my dad's mother to be specific. And I think the first person I ever spray painted with was my cousin Malachi back in Northern Ontario, being mischievous. But I think the like artistic and like creative process really came from watching my grandma.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
Missy, the same question to you.
Oh, we already know the answer to that. It's Bob Ross. Okay, no, it's my dad. No.
So I just have a question again for like everyone, I think. What are like some future projects that everyone's working on that you're excited about? Or, you know, what would your ideal project look like?
I can go first again. Um, I guess something I've always wanted to do for a long time was create like an augmented reality art installation, you know, that tells our stories in an interactive way, you know, through the use of this sort of cutting edge technology. And so I'm working on a Dakota Spirit Walk that will open up at the Bruce Bento Nature Sanctuary, which is beneath the Burial Mounds Park. I'm working with, you know, our larger Pixel Farm is their name. So they're putting together the app, and that my art is going into it, and they're sort of animating certain parts of it. I've animated certain parts of it. So it's like the first time I ever had a team of like Marlena's, you know, to do more work besides me. So I think for me, I'll be, you know, I'll be happy to see how collaborating with people who are, you know, at my skill level and above, you know, as a digital artist is, you know, like what we can create. Because I think once people who are not in my field see it, you know, it will open your eyes to the possibilities of how they can use digital art to express their own art forms. You know, like you can bring pretty much anything to the digital realm and, you know, get it out there to more people, because literally everybody has like a cell phone. So that's something I've always wanted to do, and it's what I'm currently about to release pretty soon, by the next couple of weeks. So, you know, that for me is like a dream I've always had.
Sorry, I think I cut out for a little bit there, like my screen got closed down, but that's really cool. And I can't wait to see like when that gets done, because I've already seen like on Instagram some of like the work that you're doing, like with that virtual, um, you know, virtual like visual art. So
Yeah, like I mean, I grew up watching Star Trek. We've all seen the holodeck and how they can create a world like that. So I was like, wouldn't it be cool if we could create like a world that tells our stories and stuff without actually, you know, having to dig up the earth to build something new, you know, so like the natural area stays natural. So I think to me, this is just like a perfect use of technology and telling like Indigenous stories.
I can go. I've been spending a lot of time with a couple elders, one who really has a lot of knowledge base with our plant-based medicines, and that is knowledge that my grandmother also carried. And then I've been spending a lot of time with one of my wet'as who actually named me and gave my my name that comes from the water. And a lot of what I've been doing like over the last couple months is just spending time and you know, kind of like Rolodexing all of this information in my head so that I can use it in creative ways. And I really want to start doing some more like projects and stuff that really just are like solely using like our traditional pieces, like recipes for like how we used to traditionally make paint with like berries and like earth substances and like medicines and just things like that. So I've been working on kind of trying to learn more of that information and apply it, you know, just daily for like myself and family, but also like as a way to like continue to guide art and to be able to do some like natural like based projects, I guess, and just using like our medicines as part of the artwork itself and the pieces, if that makes sense.
So let's see here. So ideally, the direction that the work is going right now, just with interdisciplinary arts, moving in the direction the same as Marlena, moving into more augmented reality 360. We do have a video that we produced based on Coyote Way Going Back Home, which is the second installment. It's on my Vimeo page. We haven't released it yet. We haven't quite thought of a platform that we wanted to release it on, just because I feel like there's a certain way that you need to present augmented or 360 to the world, just because I think people look at it as like a consumer technology. But I think people like Marlena, myself, and other artists, especially in Canada, are creating immersive media based on our traditional stories, based on our way of telling stories, which, and also like documentaries. Like, I think that's the most important thing, is that people are creating 360 documentaries to talk about sacred sites and to even create policies to preserve sacred sites and also to stop desecration of sacred sites. So I believe that this technology is very important on a lot of levels. So the other part for me is really looking at like, how do these mediums mix? How do they work together? And so that's why with like Celestia Embodiment X, it's really bringing together like artists that are working either like in hip hop, traditional arts, performance, live painting, all of these different parts, which are our people, our culture, our art community, and how do these work together? So for myself, like as a filmmaker, as a producer, as somebody who wants to support other artists, this really gives a platform for other artists to have an evening together, to share, really to highlight what we're doing in what we say Indian country. But, you know, for me, like music videos, like I love music videos. I want to continue to produce music videos and produce a 360 music video. That's something that's been in production since last year. And it's on Missing and Murdered, which I think is something that hasn't been really released. There's a lot of documentary on Missing and Murdered, which I think are really valid and very important. But for me, you know, looking at Missing and Murdered is really much deeper than just, you know, having a red skirt or wearing a red shirt or wearing the color red. It's really talking about why is the deeper meanings and levels as to where human trafficking began. You know, where did it start? We can look at boarding schools here in the US. You know, kids were farmed out of Carlisle. There was even like what Thomasina was sharing with me about her, you know, is it your great grandfather? There was like
it's my grandfather.
Yeah, your grandfather, like the orphan trains, right? The Irish orphan trains. So it's it's not just in the Indigenous community, it's throughout our globe that these systems were in place through boarding schools. So that's something that I really want to talk more about in my work, and looking at it from a spiritual perspective and where these entities come from. It's kind of big, but you know, why not? You know, we have this lifetime, we have a lot of work to do. This is the 7th generation.
Thank you all for sharing all of that. And again, I just want to remind you artists, if you could drop your websites or your Instagram in the chat, because I'm sure, especially after hearing all of that work that you guys have coming up, and your passion projects, I think we'd love to follow along on your journey and make sure that we don't miss any upcoming things. And then I think, Holly, do you have a question for any of the panelists?
I actually don't have any questions. Yeah, at this time, I think it's just really exciting to hear what everyone is like involved in and doing. I know a lot of our networks overlap a lot, so I do get to see and hear from all 3 folks on the call, and it's really inspiring. And you know, it's just great to be able to see, because it kind of gives you that inspiration to keep creating and keep moving forward in a good way. So no questions, just miigwech for all that you do, and happy to share space with everyone today.
All right, thank you. We will get into audience questions now. So again, we have some questions already out there. If you have questions for the panelists, please drop them in the chat. So first question that we have out there, what is the sketch or creative process like for a mural for you all? And whoever wants to answer that can just jump in.
Well, I'll jump in first. So for like the creative process that I think about when creating murals is, it's usually like I have like an archive of ideas or messages I want to share with others. And so generally like it's really, it's kind of weird because like, and I've gotten better at it, but it's usually just like I take a sketchbook and I loosely do a sketch. And so it's going to look nothing like what I'm going to actually put on the wall. But as like, you know, I started doing murals for bigger murals and things like that. Because I taught myself how to do digital design this past winter. I've been going more into that, but yeah, doing that and because it gives it more of like a professional look. But even so, I think I like my my original way of doing it, which, you know, is just a way that I've taught myself and how to be more fluid, is just having that general idea, and then like the messages or designs will come as you paint. But professionally, you know, I always have a mock-up for folks to see. So
Anybody else want to answer that too? I know one thing that I've really learned working with muralists for so many years is that everybody's process is so radically different, and it's really cool to see how each individual artist does the sketch or the planning process.
I can explain mine. I mean, I look at something like, since all the pieces I've created have been in the Twin Cities, so I mean, I look at what kind of Dakota history is here. You know, I have a Dakota land map that has historical features on it and also has the present day sort of laid on top of each other. And so, I mean, through that kind of research, I kind of have a general idea of certain areas that has, you know, like burial mounds, or, you know, like a Dakota village was actually there. So, or it was like along the Dakota Trail. So those kind of things I'd like to use as inspiration for a mural, depending on its location. And then also I try to think about how it will be seen in that community, or how the community will interact with that space around it, just to try to connect people like on a day-to-day level to that piece. And when it comes to sketching, you know, I do everything pretty much digitally. I'm really good at pencil portraits and stuff. I just don't like to do them anymore. They're not fun, but digital, you know, I take a picture of the wall and I know the shape of it, and I basically just sketch it as if I'm going to be putting it on the wall on Illustrator and stuff. And then if I like the one I did here, you know, it's projected on the wall, so it was really fast for me to get that process done, just knowing the shape of it. And every building is like a different shape too, so it's kind of fun to like potters and stuff, you know, they designed their shape around the shape of the building and how, the shape of their pots. So it's kind of like thinking about how your artwork will lay over different weird little grooves that buildings have. So.
Thank you guys. I'm gonna jump into the next question here. So Jamie Schumacher, hey. Jamie has two questions, and let's see how much time we have. But this first question here, I'm super interested in the decolonization aspect of this conversation. As I've been working with small businesses and creative cultural districts, it seems like it's almost harder to put up art in public places, even when they're neglected. Permits, cost barriers, rules and regulations from transit authorities. What are your thoughts on working in these collective spaces with or without permission? So whoever wants to jump into that.
I mean, if you create art with augmented reality, no one can say anything because you can't really see it. So, I mean, there's that way of creating, you know, like a video that will go viral using augmented reality and their space that they, you know, that they quote unquote own, you know, because I don't think any human being can actually own the earth, but, you know, that's the society that we live in.
I would say that like it is difficult sometimes, but it all depends on like who you're working with and kind of like the degree of because there is a very much like white way of doing things and like business way and you know, so if you're dealing with someone that like, you know, wants to make sure that they have like all their permits in a row and all these things, you know, I would suggest even to them that they do that before even approaching an artist. Because, you know, that takes a lot of our time. And, you know, as Indigenous artists, you know, like doing all that work and things like that to paint on something that like, I don't know, as Marlena says, like, isn't really like truly belong to anyone. And so I guess I've gotten around that way, like not so much anymore, but in the past of like just doing like a pop-up mural or project and just kind of like doing it first. And then if there's problems with it later, you know, you can always solve it.
Thank you for your responses to that. I also am a big advocate of the do and ask forgiveness later. Although I will say, I know I've done projects in many different states and cities, and it's crazy how it totally depends on the place that you're in. Some places are like, you must have permits for every single thing. And then some places are like, we really don't care what you do. But I do agree with Tommy. I want to echo a really important thing that she said. Don't put it on the artist. I think Marlena said this too, like get all the permits, get everything before you talk to the artist. Like, you know, just let the artist do their art thing. And you deal with that and figure out all of the bureaucratic nonsense. So thank you for those. Let me check the time. I think we have time for these last two questions. So another question from Jamie. Jamie said, Candida, I really appreciated the Mural Manifesto that you wrote last summer. So I got really crazy and I wrote a big mural manifesto last year when everybody was painting during the uprising, because it seemed like there was a lot of urgency on business owners' side and especially on white business owners' side to get people of color to create murals on their buildings. So in what ways do you think the movement of the past year did or didn't do a good job shifting the norm? And I'm guessing you're saying shifting the norm for what we expect from artists, and what changes still need to come. Thoughts on that, artists?
I would just pop in again and say, for folks that are looking for art that like want it like, you know, just like specifically like think about the people that you're asking, like, is this art like emotional labor from this person? And does it need to be done at this very moment? Or is that like something that is in your mind? So just before you approach people for art, I guess like especially like you know, BIPOC people, then I would just like think about that before you ask, because, you know, not only are these artists already dealing with like how to navigate the society being like Indigenous person or like, you know, a person of color, but then like you're also adding on like labor that person has to do then. And so just having like a conscious mind of that and giving people time and space to create, because rather than like having like a mural right away, it might even be nicer for your building to like have a more well thought out production. So I guess just giving more time to everyone. It doesn't need to be like immediate.
Yeah, I want to jump in and what you're saying, Tommy, because I agree. I feel like a lot of times if you're, I mean, I'm just going to speak from like a production side of like video and film. Like when you're a producer, that's your responsibility. So whatever it is that you're producing, whether it be a film, a video, you know, whatever else, like that responsibility is on your shoulders, not the artist. I would never ask my DP to book hotels for me or do the manual labor that I would get paid to do as a producer. That's your job. The other part too is that, you know, our arts, our Indigenous community, our Native arts community is like very strong. We're very well networked and connected. And, you know, luckily, like we can support one another, we can hold one another up. But also at the same time, though, we also don't navigate the business part of, I mean, if we talk about like decolonizing, you know, like the business part or the colonized way of doing business, like for us, it's really about, you know, from the traditional standpoint, it's like, what values do you bring to this project? You know what I mean? Like if we're teaching younger artists or if we're creating space for community, that's important to us as artists, working with younger artists and or, you know, something that's really going to create a change or even have a healing aspect to it. I think that's oftentimes really overlooked. Because it's more about like how fast can you get a mural up and how quickly can you produce this, and versus what is the process of this piece, you know, and how do we support you in that process as Indigenous artists or even as artists who maybe have more intentionality into their work.
I can add too, like if you're like, let's say a building owner and you want someone to paint a mural and you want it to have an impact. I mean, think about what kind of impact will it have on you personally? Like what kind of relationship will you build with the artist going forward? You know, how can you support them or give them more opportunities or, you know, share their message? Like you should be just as passionate about the project as the artist is too, you know, because it's no fun as an artist to be passionate about something and have the person in charge take no interest in what you're doing. You know, they don't come up and talk to you about your art piece. They're just happy with the artist statement. Like, yeah, the artist statement's for everybody to know about, but, you know, like working on this project, you know, Angela's there all the time, you know, talking about the piece. And, you know, I felt when she gave me a tour, she knew like all these deeper stories that were going beyond just the artist statement, you know, so. I think, you know, if you're going to run these kind of projects, you got to be passionate about the people you're working with and build long-term relationships so that, you know, if I saw you at another event, you know, I feel like it's cool to come up and talk to you. You know, we know each other now. You know, I don't still want to create something on your wall and then, you know, it looks good to you, but you don't really care too much about it. And me, I don't know anything about your business. I don't know anything about the community around it. You know, I want to build those kind of relationships on a one-on-one level at the very minimum, you know, because that's what we can do as human beings, you know, when we're face to face. So that's what, you know, I think additionally, if you want to do these kind of things, like what kind of impact will it have on you personally?
I love that you bring up relationships. And I think, you know, just at the most basic level, when we are talking about decolonization, you know, we turn from transactional to relational. It's not just about like, you know, I'm hiring an artist, I'm giving you money, you're putting up a picture and we're done. That's transactional, you know, like everything Marlena was saying, it is about the relationship, like what happened before, what is happening while we're working on it, and what's happening after, you know. In some ways, like a mural can be almost like wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt, you know? Like, is it just something that you're putting on for the day to show everybody these three words and then that's it, you take it off, you're done, that's all you're doing? Or does that statement really become a part of your life and reflect itself in everything that you do? So thank you guys for talking about that. We have time for one more quick question. Catherine, I feel like the artist answered some of your question already. So I'm just gonna skip to Joan right here. Joan asks, what support would be helpful for you from the community? Also, thank you so much for sharing. Admire you all so much and appreciate the beautiful and meaningful work you create. So what support would be helpful for you from the community?
Keep giving us, I was gonna say, keep giving us spaces to work in, you know, I mean, I post on Facebook, you know, I want to create a mural, and someone gave me this opportunity. I'm sure someone saw my message on Facebook and shared it, you know, someone here and there that Marlena wants to do a mural. And so they create space in me because, you know, I can't do that without other people, you know, giving you that space.
I was just going to ask, like, which community are we talking about? Because I know, like, our community, our Indigenous community, our Native community will always come through. But if you're talking about the larger community and the art community, I feel like giving artists opportunities that, I mean, you know, I have to say, like, Forecast really did a great job in curating, helping to curate Chroma Zone and identifying Indigenous artists. You know, like Teresa Sweetland definitely has her pulse on the Indigenous community and the artists that should be recognized, because there are people in the circle that have been doing work for a long time and haven't been recognized for their work. You know, I'm putting Thomasina out for sure. You know, like, I remember way back in the day, you know, when Tommy was painting, and, you know, because it was such a male driven community, you know, it's really hard to push through. The same with film, same thing. It's like a lot of us have to do the work where we're building a community for other artists like ourselves. But if you have the power to do it, if you're working for an institution or organization and you have the power to do it, I feel like you need to step up and advocate, like really advocate. And I think, Joan, you definitely with Hennepin Theater Trust did that for us. And like, I really appreciate that. So specific shout out there to Joan and Teresa. Thank you.
Well, just to go off what Missy was saying about the Native communities supporting each other, which we do, but you know, we want our messages to go outside of our community because the things we're saying is so important to, you know, society as a whole. So we need people to let us come into those spaces and, you know, but yeah, you know, like Missy saying, when she's saying what community, yeah, we have Native people do support each other, but we need the outside voices, you know, outside places to let us come there too, so that we can share those with each other. Otherwise, I don't know, we're confined to like small spaces, and that's something I think that we've always fought against. You know, our ancestors today is they're always confining us to, you know, a small space, and our voices, you know, they need to be heard everywhere.
I would agree with that completely. I would also like to echo again, just like from the community standpoint, is just, yeah, offering like those opportunities to Indigenous Native artists, and then also like providing that space too. Like, for example, like sometimes it's really easy to have like funding but no wall, or vice versa. And so I think that's something, you know, like maybe even having it be more commonplace, like Marlena said, like if you have an idea of what you want to put out there for the community, maybe even just making a post about it, and then having like, as community members, such as yourself, Joan, or people, you know, that have been in this kind of community, like help echo that by like resharing or things like that. But yeah, I also do want to do a shout out to Joan. I worked with her all summer at Hennepin Trust Theater working with young people, and it was really awesome. But thank you for the question.
Holly, I don't know if you want to chime in on that last question.
So I just put in the chat, sorry, my little one is like right here, he's kind of loud. But no, I think really, you know, like space, flexibility with projects. I think a lot of times things come up, and like we all have things going on outside of like art in our like different projects. And sometimes like when you go to put an image on the wall, it's a little bit smaller and to the left, and it makes a huge difference if you have a business owner who's like, yep, that still works, like let's do this and let's support the work, versus someone who you're working with who makes you like redesign the same thing like 5 times, because then it starts to take away your creativity and some of that process that we've all been talking about, that's super important. Yeah, so space, flexibility, opportunity, and just highlighting Indigenous folks, making sure that if you are an ally and you're outside of our community, that you're advocating for us collectively and helping to provide resources so that we can like reach a broader audience, and that our voices can be heard outside of Franklin Avenue or outside of certain parts of the Twin Cities, because what we have to share is really important. And unfortunately, we've had generations of our families and ancestors be silenced, and we, like Missy was saying and everyone else has been saying, like this is the next generation, this is the 7th generation where we're breaking all of those silences, and we're trying to kind of push out of that that environment. And we've all been working really hard to create healing and change cycles that our families have gone through for generations due to colonization. And so we're here and gonna be here. And so yeah, just the continued support. Yeah.
Thank you so much for all of your answers to that. And I just want to echo out a couple of things that I heard loud and clear, like give us space, give us opportunity. And also, this is something that I just would love to shout from the rooftops all the time. Let Indigenous artists, let BIPOC artists exercise their own voice. Do not dictate what they are going to paint or ask them for 5 revisions. Just let them have their voice, and pay them well and give them food. Support them while they're painting. And that's, so again, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for coming. Artists, thank you so much for spending your time with us. I hope everybody checked out their websites and their social media so you can continue following them. Get out to the CEZ and check out their murals in person, and check out Missy's event. Remind me the name of your event again. Celestial
Embodiment X.
Celestial Embodiment X this Saturday. Closing event for Chroma Zone. Bring a chair. And then I just want to ask the artists, would you guys want to just smile for a picture real quick? Let's document this since we can't do a selfie with each other. Just gonna do a Zoom shot. 3, 2, 1. Love it. Also, Missy, you know what? We need to coordinate with our hats one of these days. I know mine's upstairs and I was like, oh, I should have learned that. All right, well, thank you so much to everybody for coming. We really appreciate it. See you soon.
Miigwech, Gigawabaman Dokshta.
Yep, we can end it. Bye.